And good evening from Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. The city of Pigeon Forge, of course, welcomes each and every one of you here this evening. This will be our 5th year that we've done this, and it has been so successful. As a matter of fact, this is probably one of the most successful programs of the entire week. I've got a few things that I want to mention to you that we are all very, very proud of. Last year, over 5,000 people in a week's time came through and saw our Wilderness Wildlife Week. This year, as of right now, and we still have 2 days to go, we are at 6,100 people, and we are so proud. I want you to know that this takes a lot of people working together to put this program on. 60 experts from all over eastern Tennessee, TWRA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, our own national park here, professors from the University of Tennessee. All of these experts, don't want to miss the National Foundation to Protect America's Eagles. All of these experts have given their time for one purpose, and that is to educate our visitors about our beautiful area. The hotel, Electro Voice, Walmart, look around and see all of the things that are being donated, comped in any way, personalized plannings, all the things that are comped for this one program. No one buys anything, no one sells anything. We come for the education of our beautiful area. Walk around this evening, please. I urge you to do that. And look at the beautiful photography here that is all around this room and all outside. Some of our beautiful artists that have come in here and photographers even to show even more of a beauty. And what better way can you see the beauty of our mountains than through our artists and our photographers? Through the eyes of our artists and photographers, excuse me. This is being taped this evening, as Jim mentioned. You can buy these tapes through Blitz Schnell Photo over at the Holiday Inn, because last year several people mentioned, where can I get one of these tapes? Blitz Schnell Photo in the Holiday Inn. I don't want to take too much time, but I've got something else I must say. Will all the volunteers that have helped me with this program tonight and throughout the entire week, please stand up. This just represents a few. We have 75 volunteers for this particular program, and I'm speaking of Wilderness Wildlife Week. And I am so very proud to have these people working with me to put a program on such as this. On the fun side, just for a second, there's 2 gentlemen over there that has been manning the PA system, and we have called this WILD 113.96 FM radio. WILD, of course, wild, and 113 was the day we started, 1996. WILD, I'm telling you, they've done a tremendous job. We've had Tom Dykes here manning videos during the week so we can make little parts for our children in the school. We've had Bob Burnett up here taking every single solitary bit of the entire program. And along with all the volunteers that have been in the reception area, I'm telling you, please, one more time, a hand for these people. Now, Veta, I'm through. It is your program tonight. Veta King, our organizer of our program, and I thank you, the City of Pigeon Forge, thank you, the Office of Special Events, thanks you for getting this together, along with Jerry. I'll turn the program over to you, and you can introduce Jerry and the panelists. And I thank all of you for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I thought you better include Jerry because he and I both are on the phone getting our panelists and all that. We are really pleased that you're here tonight. It means so much when we can have these folks here talking about the way life was in the Smokies and around the Smokies before it was a park. And this year we've kind of went forward a little ways. Ted's not quite that old, but we really appreciate everybody coming to hear the program, and we appreciate the panelists coming to speak. I write a weekly column for the Mountain Press, and I interview folks about the way life was in the early 1900s and the things they remember. And I run across a lot of interesting topics. One that I wanted to just point out tonight before we get into the program, I was interviewing some folks about parlor games, and I guess Herb would tell you a lot of folks around here didn't have parlors, so I guess they were just called entertainment in the early days. But I'm sorry.
No, you can't hear because you're not sitting down.
Okay, I can see it. But one game I thought was interesting, I just wanted to pass along tonight. It's called the pack saddle game. And the way you played this game, everybody had a fireplace or a heater in their home, and they would take a pine knot and they'd heat it in the fireplace. And then they would pass it around to a circle of players. And the players, it's kind of like the game hot potato. They'd pass it around, and as they were doing that, if the pine knot, the fire went out on the pine knot, then that person was it. But as they did it, they had this little rhyme that they said, and it was, Jack's alive, alive like a bee. If he dies in my hand, you can pack saddle me. Well, when the kindling died, when the fire died in the kindling, then that person had to sit down on a chair, and then when they sat down, they were the one to be pack saddled. Then another player came up, and they held an object over their head, like they might pick an old shoe or a lace doily or something. And when they held that over their head, they had another little rhyme that they would say, and I can't remember these. Let's see.
Maybe it hangs over your forehead.
There you go. Herb's got that. Let me see. Okay, and then the person in the chair would say, do you remember that, fine or super fine?
If it's fine, it's a girl, super, no, fine is probably even super fine.
Well, fine or super fine. Yeah, fine or super fine. If it happened to be a little lace doily, that would be fine. If it's an old shoe, no, if it was a lace doily, it would be super fine. If it's an old shoe.
We'd use the pillars of holding it over. If you held it over, if you was a girl.
Okay.
Then they'd say fine or super fine, and some of us says it's fine, means it's a lady, so you're supposed to guess who.
Okay, your game's different from my game. Okay, it's the same one, just a little different.
We rolled up a piece of paper.
Okay.
This was fine, I rolled up a piece of paper, so we
It went,
who
went out a lot faster, didn't it?
I'd let him be. If he dies in my hand, you can pack saddle me. They'd
Okay.
lay down the floor and they'd lay, if you didn't guess what it was, they'd lay it on top of you.
That's, yeah. Like if it's the old shoe or the lace doily, they laid, now they laid in the floor in his game. In mine, they sat in the chair and they bent over, and then when you didn't guess it, you were pack saddled with that item, the old shoe or the lace doily, and then they'd pass another item, and after a while, you might be pack saddled with 5 or 10 items, and I guess you quit when you couldn't. If you guessed it, you quit, or if you couldn't pack anything else on their back, I guess. Yeah.
Before they killed you, laying stuff on you.
Right. Okay. But anyway, those were the kinds of games that folks entertained themselves with, and I thought that one was kind of different and interesting. But, Jerry, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can introduce the panel, and we'll get on with the program.
We're very pleased to be here, and we're very pleased to have these people up here. The Smoky Mountains is a very beautiful place. One of the treasures of the Smoky Mountains are the people who settled here. Now, they came down through Virginia and across Carolina and settled this area. It was pretty rough territory back then. They lived in these hollows and on these hills, mostly in the hollows, and didn't live much on the hills. But there's lots of families who stayed, and many of those families still are here in these mountains. Today, we're getting lots and lots of new people coming in and finding the beauty of the park. and we don't want them to lose the biggest beauty or the best thing that I think the park has to offer, and it's some of these people and the way they lived. I was fortunate to be able to work with Alex Haley during the bicentennial, and he told me an old African proverb, and it's extremely poignant to me. He says an older person is like a library, and when we lose that library, when we lose that person, we lose a library and a wealth of knowledge. I think those people in Africa had a very good idea about their elders, and I hope that we appreciate these people who have so much to offer to us. What we're going to do now is I'm just going to tell you these people's names, and they're going to tell you who they are and who their parents were and where they lived. Then later, after we've gone down the row, then we will come back and we'll let them tell us something, a favorite story or something about their growing up times. We'd like to apologize for Mr. Dan Connor, who could not be here. He has sickness in his family, or he would be with us, and we really regret that he's not here. Our first panelist is Zenith Whaley, and Zenith, would you tell us about yourself and about your parents and where you grew up?
I'm Zenith Whaley, the son of Lincoln Whaley, and my father was named after Abraham Lincoln. And so I'm the oldest of 10 children. And my father's father, Lincoln's father, was Ari Whaley, and he was the son of the late William M. Whaley that came here in the early 1800s. He was born in 1788 in Edgefield, South Carolina, and he came over here in the early 1800s. And I understand that he first settled near White Oak Flats, I guess is called then, Gatlinburg now. And I understand that he was a hand in establishing the Baptist church there in the White Oak Flats, the First Baptist Church, the White Oak Flats. Well, I'd like to get back to some of my doings. The very earliest that I can remember, I guess, was the naughtiest thing that I ever remember doing. One morning, my mother, she gathered up the clothes to wash on an old rub board, as a lot of you people remember. And I had a little sister, just about 5 or 6 months old. And Mother, she had to get up in we called it up in the loft, upstairs, you'd call it now, but then we called it up in the loft because she climbed the stairs up the side of the wall, and she had her clothes, the dirty clothes, laying around up there. But before she went up there, she says, "Now, Zenith," she says, "you stay right here with little sister." And she says, "Don't go out of the house." She says, "I'm going up the loft to get the dirty things to bring back down and to wash." And she says, don't you leave little sister." She said, "Stay right here with her." She says, "Your grandma is a-coming after a while." Well, that was the thing that she didn't need to say. So when she got out of my side up into the loft, well, I hit it out at that door, and I was just 2.5 years old now. I hit it out at that door, and down the road I went to meet my grandmother. I was her pet, you'd call it now, and I loved her a sight, and she'd always bring me something. She'd bring me candy, or she'd bring me crackers. She'd bring sweet crackers. Now, they're called graham crackers. But then, I didn't know anything about graham crackers. It was sweet crackers to me. She'd always bring me some sweet crackers or some candy or something. And when she'd get in hollow distance of the house, she would holler, and I'd go and meet her. I wasn't happy to doing that, even though I was real young, just 2.5 years old. Well, I took down that road to meet my grandmother, because my mother told me that she was going to be there sometime during the day. Well, I was in a hurry, of course. So I stuck down that road, and I was barefooted, and the chestnut burrs, the old burrs that had fell the fall before, they were still along the road, and those burrs had those stickers in them that was real prickly. And I was barefooted, and I'd get them, the burrs, the needles from the burrs in my heel, and I'd sit down and pick them out, and I'd get up and I'd hit it again, and I'd go till I'd get my heels full of those jaggers from the burrs, and then I'd have to sit down and pick them out again. Well, I was up and down like that. I guess I'd went just imaginary about 2/10 of a mile. And of course my mother had missed me when she come down, but she was hunting every direction but the way I went. She had went over across on the Indian Creek side. We lived right on the divide between the Indian Creek, the head of Indian Creek, and the head of Big Laurel Creek to me, but they call it Rhododendron Creek now, the part does. Well, I was born right in that gap there. Well, anyway, I got, at least I'd say 2/10 of a mile down this road, and I was sitting down, pulling the jaggers out of my heel, and the neighbor, Perry Gray, he came up, and he was right upon me before I saw him. And he said, "Hello there, little man." He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm picking these jaggers out of my heel." And so he got down and helped me. And he said, after I got the jaggers out and got up, he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to meet Grandma. My mother told me that she was a-coming today." And I said, "I'm going to meet her." Well, he knowed where my grandmother lived. It was 2 miles or more. But I was going to meet her. And anyway, he says, "Does your mother know where you are?" I said, "No." I told him the truth. I said, "No." Well, he said, "Don't you guess that you'd better just go back with me?" He said, "Your grandmother might not be along for a long time yet." And he said, "Don't you guess you better just go back with me?" I said, "No, I'm going to meet Grandma." Well, he reasoned with me for a moment or two, and nothing to do me to go to meet Grandma. Well, he finally got me by the hand and started leading me, and I bucked up on him. So he reached down and he picked me up to carry me. And when he did that, I took a Whaley fit on him, I guess you'd call it. I took a fit on him. And I scratched him, and I tried to bite him, and he'd keep me pushed off the best he could. And finally, he just outdone me, and we was going along up the road, and here we met my mother coming. Oh, she was as red in the face as almost it looked like you could light a match in it. And but she was pleased to death to see me, and I thought that I'd had it. Then after she had told me not to leave little sister, not to go out, that my grandmother was a-coming. If she hadn't have said that, I'd have sat right there with my little sister. She made the mistake in doing that. And that is the first naughty incident that I remember happened to me. And I was just 2.5 years old. My little sister's about 6 months old.
We're also happy to have with us Miss Elsa Burrell, and she can tell us a little bit about herself and where she comes from and about her family.
Well, I am a transplant. My mother's people grew up in Ohio, and my father's people grew up in Illinois. And you wonder how in the world they ever got together. Well, my father was a soldier in the Civil War. He cast his first vote for Abraham Lincoln. He was born in 1839, the youngest of about 9 children. The oldest was born in New York State. So you see, my ancestry goes back through those states quite a ways. Well, my mother's father also was a soldier in the Civil War. And when they got out of service, my grandfather liked to write letters to the National Tribune, which was a national magazine published in Washington, D.C. for the soldiers. And they would write about their families. And so he wrote about his lovely family. By that time, he'd moved to Tennessee. And he wrote about how wonderful family he had. And he named each one of them, and that he picked the guitar and they sang together and had a happy time. Well, my father, who had lost his wife, he had 10 children by his first wife. And he had lost his wife, and his youngest child was 14 and running around, of course. And so he was kind of lonely, and he read that article, and it sounded like such a happy family. He decided he'd write to one of those older girls. So he wrote to Miss Nell. Miss Nell got this letter from this old man up in Illinois. She said, I don't want anything to do with that old man. And she threw the letter down. Miss Hattie, the oldest one, said, well, you ought to at least write a letter and thank him for such a nice letter. She said, I don't want to write a letter to him. If you want to write, you write. So Miss Hattie wrote and thanked him for such a nice letter. And then he answered back, and then she answered back, and they kept writing, and finally he wrote and said, I'm writing to your father. I want to bring you back to Illinois as my wife. So that's the way I happened to be born in Illinois. Well, the long story goes that when I was 18 months old, they moved to Tennessee. And I lived in the same house in Shelbyville, Tennessee, from the time I was 18 months old until I was 21, and had already started teaching. I started teaching in a one-room school where I had all the children from grades 1 through 8, and only taught 1 month because I was substituting for my aunt. And the superintendent called me and said, we have a vacancy in a 2-teacher school in the primary department. So I go to this little 2-teacher school and teach the first 4 grades. Well, the principal was a teacher who, she didn't like English, and she never had very much training in English. And she found out I was an English major, and she says, I'll take some of your little children classes if you'll teach my English. So I started teaching the English to the upper grades. So I was really teaching all grades that year. Then I went to the superintendent and I said, I want a job in high school. You give these high school teachers 9 months' work and 9 months' pay, and we just get 8 months. So that's how I started high school teaching. She said, well, I only have 2 jobs in high school, and they're both home economics. I had no home economics in college. I was an English and modern language major with a minor in mathematics. She looked at me and she said, I'll tell you what, if you will go to the university this summer and take all the home economics you can get, I'll give you one of those jobs. So that's how I started high school. Well, then when after I taught 12 years, 6 years in high school and 6 years in elementary, why, my superintendent came to me one day and he said, I want you to do something different next year. I said, what? He said, I want you to help start supervision in this county. I said, supervision? I never had a class in supervision, and I never worked under one, and I don't know what to do. He said, well, you can go to the university on Saturday and find out. So for 1 year, I drove from Wartburg to University of Tennessee at Knoxville every Saturday and worked all during the week with the schools in Morgan County as a supervisor for $105 a month, and if I got my paper cashed, I had to take a 10% discount. I couldn't make it. So I had an offer to go to another county for $1,200 for 9 months' work, and I took it. And then I had a chance to go to Polk County down in the Copper Basin. If you've never been in the Copper Basin, you have no idea what it was like. The hills were all bare, red clay, no trees, nothing growing. Well, I had just completed the first conservation workshop in Tennessee. And I thought, what can I do? I called Jim Bailey and I said, Jim, you got some pine seedlings up there? He said, yes, plenty of them. I said, bring all you can bring in your car. I need them. He brought all that he could load in his car to the Copper Basin, and the children of the Copper Basin set out those trees, those seedlings, all around the schools. That was something different. I stayed there 3 years, and then the supervisor's job opened at Blount County, Maryville. Well, I'd gone through Maryville so many times, and I just loved that little town, and I thought, I just want to be there. So I went to Maryville, and I have been there ever since. I retired in 1969 and started a new job, full-time, at Tremont as a volunteer. I helped to establish Tremont Environmental Education Center and have worked there as a volunteer. I've been a volunteer in the park ever since 1969. I'm 91 years old, and I'm a volunteer in the hospital, and I keep busy all the time.
Amen.
Okay, our third panelist is Mr. Ted Reagan, and Ted's going to tell us about his family and maybe a little interesting story, something about him.
Well, mine seems real dull to theirs. But I was born in 1932 at Elkmont. And as the story goes, when I was born, Doc Montgomery, who many of you know, was present at my birth, and they were going to call me Fred. But Doc had a son that had got killed in an accident, and his name was Ted. And Doc, I reckon, traded. I'll not charge you the $3 now for this delivery if you'll name him Ted. So that's how I got my name. So that's a pretty good deal with them back then. And we moved from, of course, I don't remember any of that, but I do remember living at Tremont, which we moved from Elkmont down to Tremont there, and my father worked on a skidder, as I understand, whatever that is. And later on, as that job wore out, we moved back to Boogertown. And of course, I remember Boogertown too, and I remember moving from a log house in Boogertown to an old box house and a sled pulled by a bull. And I do remember we broke our only lamp bulb. So that was a big problem. Then we moved to come to Gatlinburg when I was about 6 years old, and I went to school at Phi Beta Phi. 1958, I moved to Pigeon Forge, and I've been here ever since. Nothing really exciting happened in my life.
Tell about your rolling store days.
Oh, Lord, no. That is pretty much, the first job I ever had was on a rolling store. In fact, as a teenager, about 16 years old, I went to work for Mr. Carlomby of Gatlinburg, who had an old rolling store, and we went all over the county just about. In fact, I learned to drive a car on that old rolling store. And one day as we was coming up through Possum Holler here in Lower Middle Creek, through there and come back into Pigeon Forge, he got sick on me. And I drove a few times. I drove that old truck a few times. He'd let me. And he had to get off there and get somebody to take him home over at the old store there at Butler's. And I drove on up through Upper Middle Creek and back through the Glades and back to Roaring Fork by myself. And, of course, it was a whale night and I got in. I should have been in about 4 or 5 o'clock, but it was about 10 o'clock. But I got in, and I worked there for a year or two and then went in the Army. And after I got out of the Army, I come back out of the Army and went back and worked a couple more years. And, of course, rolling stores at that time was a big thing through the community because a lot of people didn't have no ways to go to the store, and well, it was a good business. But, of course, that finally played out. But
Can you describe the store, kind of what you carried and what it looked like?
Well, we carried just about everything you need. We carried all sorts of canned stuffs. We carried flour, meal, sugar, salt, and coffee was a big thing. In fact, that was the most expensive thing we had in those days. That's when coffee went so high, back in the 50s at that time. But just about everything that the normal family had to carry, and we've done a good business. Bran, I've carried Bran across the swinging bridge over in Pittman Center. That was scary. I guess Zenith remembers a lot of those bridges over there. In fact, I believe he even traded with me a little. But,
Did you ever carry any snuff?
I never did sell nothing but Bruton, Garrett, oatmeal, and stuff like that. A lot of Samson Twist. Not too much Rooster, but the Garrett was the big thing. Garrett glass. Amen.
Did you take chickens and eggs?
Oh, Lord, I traded chickens and eggs. I'll give as high as 15 cents a dozen for eggs.
And they trade their chicken and eggs for something to eat with.
Oh, yes, they sure would. That's how I got so wealthy. I was making $12 a week.
Okay, thank you very much.
But I only worked 6 days.
Just 6 days. Zenith, Greenbrier was is a noted place in this area for one family, and I think you remember that family. Could you tell us about Greenbrier as you grew up there?
Well, as I got through telling you that where I was born, it was that little creek tributary off of the main stream, of the Middle Prong Pigeon. But then we moved from there right shortly after I got to run away from home, into the Greenbrier area, up the left prong of the Pigeon River. It forked there. Porter's Creek cuts off, goes up through Porter's Flat, and we lived up on, and my daddy built a new house up there. And I was about 5 at that time, and I remember helping him build the house, especially when he was building the chimney. I would carry rocks as big as I could carry, and he'd put them in the chimney. And that's where we lived when I started to school in 1921, there in the at the forks of the river, where the old schoolhouse sat, where the schoolhouse then was where the hotel eventually. The kids outgrowed the school, and they had to build a new school, and Kimsey Whaley and James West Whaley bought the old school, and they converted it into a hotel. They first called it the Kant Hotel, and then after that Jack Huff built the one on Mount LeConte, why they changed the name of that one then and just called it the Greenbrier Hotel. Well, there's where I started to school, 1921. I was 7 years old. And so, as I remember growing up in my early years there as a boy, one of the things that stands out in my mind a lot now as I've grown older was the neighbors, how that the neighbors got along. Everybody seemed to love everybody, and if some of the neighbors got in need of something, why, they would just divide, especially if one got sick. Why, they would go and see about the sick man or sick lady, see if they needed anything, and especially if a man got sick and he had a crop out, his corn and his potatoes and whatnot, why, they'd gather up in the neighborhood there where we lived, and they'd go and work out his crop. If it was in the winter time, he put out of wood, well, they'd gather up half a dozen, they'd go and cut him a bunch of wood and carry it in. That's one of the things now that stands out in my mind, that when we lived there in the Greenbrier area, about how that the people felt towards each other. They were all neighbors. And as Mr. Clabo went before me, talking about the fruit, everybody had a few fruit trees. Everybody that owned a home had a few fruit trees. And some had more, some had less. But sometimes the late cold would kill the fruit in areas where it wouldn't kill them in another area. And so we always had plenty of fruit because there'd be enough to go around. And it was neighborly, like I told you. I followed my father to the field, to the cornfield, ever since I was 5 years old, as long as we lived in the Greenbrier area at that time. I remember one time I was helping him hoe corn, and the hoe handle, well, if I got close to him, I would gouge him with it. Well, he had an old hoe there that was pretty well worn, and he got down and he cut the handle off so I could use it. Well, I was proud of that little hoe, and I just loved it. I'd take it to the house with me. I'd take it in the house, and I'd have took it to bed with me if they'd have let me. I thought so much of it, you know. Well, when growing up, I was just 14 when we had to leave the park. I didn't get to stay there too long. There's a lot of the older people around now that still live close to it, you see. When I left, I went down the lower end of the county. We moved out of there in February, the spring of 1928. Well, I was gone for 20 years. Well, when I had to leave the park, well, it nearly killed me, having to leave my home, and I nursed a grudge against the park for several years. I'd say the 20 years that I was gone. I'd go back, visit relatives that lived near the park, spend a weekend or something, but I still didn't like that. And so I'd go back and camp. They allowed us to camp. I'd go back and camp and fish, which I liked to do. In my earlier days, I followed my daddy along the streams. He liked to fish, and he liked to hunt, and I followed him a-hunting when I was a small boy. But anyway, when I had to leave, well, I didn't like it a bit. Went down the lower end of the county and stayed for 20 years. Then I moved back. I leased a farm right against the park boundary, and I moved back. Then after I moved back, that was in 1949, why then I was at home and I started visiting that park again. And I like to hike. I still do. And I still do a lot of hiking. So anyway, Dr. Baldwin from Danville, Illinois, he came down to the Smokies, and he bought some property, and he built him a summer home. And he had told the man that he bought the property from that he would like to get connected with somebody that knowed the area. He had come here to do hiking, and he said he wanted to get a hold of someone, if he could, that knowed the area, and if they would hike some with him. And the old man Will Schultz that he had bought his property from sent him to see me. And that was right down my alley then. He told me, he said, if you will go with me as a guide. He says, I want to hike in the Smokies, especially this Greenbrier area of the Smokies. He says, I'll give you $1 an hour around the clock. And that was pretty good money then in 1949, because you could only get about 75 cents an hour at the regular jobs, construction jobs, you know. Well, I took him up on that. And he was a doctor. He was a specialist. He was an eye, nose, and throat specialist. And he was also a naturalist and a photographer. And so hiking with him was educational to me. I enjoyed it aside. And so him and I, we hiked the trails. We hiked the manways leading up to the Appalachian Trail. And we also hiked the Appalachian Trail, 71 miles through the park, just through the park. And I enjoyed every bit of it, because being a naturalist, why, he would stop along and he'd take pictures of the mushrooms, the salamanders, and the birds of all. And he also knowed the trees. He knowed all the shrubs. He knowed all the birds. And as I said, the mushrooms and the salamanders and all these things, he'd stop along and he'd take pictures and he'd point them out. And then he told me the names, pointed out, showed me the names of all the birds, the common name and the scientific name too. And that was educational to me. I really enjoyed that. And so that got me in the idea of hiking. After I was through hiking with Dr. Baldwin, well, I'd done a lot of hiking on my own and with other tourists that would come here. I'd hike with them as a guide from time to time and point out the various places, and those that I didn't hike with that I'd meet along the trails. I'd tell them of the various places, the most important places in the park along the trails and what they could expect to see, like the Greenbrier Pinnacle Trail, the Ramsey Cascade Trail, and the Indian Creek Trail, the Big Laurel Creek Trail, and up through Porter Flat, all the various trails, and then I'd tell them what they could expect to see along these trails. The beautiful flowers. 2 seasons that I loved the best. One was along in April, through April. The early flowers came out then, and they were beautiful, and the trails was just lined with these beautiful flowers. And I loved these beautiful flowers. Then in the fall of the year, in October, between the middle of October and the 1st of November, or sometimes in November, depending on the weather, I like to hike these trails out to these high points, like the Greenbrier Pinnacle, especially when the color was at its peak. You'd go up there, and you could just turn around and look back at the hardwood, and it was just red and gold, and you could just see all the contours that run into the tributaries and I really enjoyed that.
Okay.
I can.
Well, let me talk to Miss Burrell here, and you had a little different experience coming in and working with the school children, and I know you did some demonstrations of the old way of teaching, and I remember you singing a little song that helped us to learn how to read back then, and could you share that with these, the blueback speller and how they did that? You don't have to go through the entire alphabet, but give us a little sample of that.
Well, we had a group of a teacher and her children that came to Tremont that had been to Cades Cove, lived near Cades Cove all their lives, and she wanted to do something different. And she said, how about a day in an old-fashioned school? And I said, well, there's only one old-fashioned school located around here that I know of, and that's Little Greenbrier. And so we went up to Little Greenbrier School, and she said, then I want to have a spelling bee. Well, I remembered my father teaching me to spell the old-fashioned way. We had to spell by syllables. And so I thought, well, maybe they might enjoy that. And so I made a chart from the old blueback speller, beginning with the first grade, and learning the vowels and the sounds of the vowels. And then we went into syllables, and they learned to spell by syllables. And I don't think I've ever seen children or adults, as far as that goes, that enjoyed anything more than the spelling matches that we would have. I would give out the word baby, and they'd spell it baby, B-A-B-B-Y-B, baby. Lady, L-A-D-Y-D, lady. But every once in a while there was somebody that would say lady, L-A-D-Y, die. I say bye-bye. But that's one of the things that I have enjoyed so much with people, and I do this every summer on Tuesdays for tourists, and I have tourists from all over the world. I had 34 different states this last summer and 8 foreign countries, and so and then during the school year I have school groups. Groups that spend the week up at Tremont, or groups that spend the week at Wesley Woods, or maybe they're local groups. They can't go to Little Greenbrier, to Tremont or to Wesley Woods because they can't get enough money. You know, it costs money to take a group of children to one of those places to spend a week. And so they make arrangements with me to meet them at the schoolhouse. I've had as many as 100 first graders in that little schoolhouse at one time. I say, boys and girls, if you be real good, we'll make those big folks stay at the back of the room. They won't get in front of you. Will you? Yes, we will. And they're usually just as good as gold. And then I have third graders, maybe 100 of those. I've had 100 fifth graders. I've had 60 eighth graders at one time. If you've worked with eighth graders, you know they can giggle at anything. And as long as you understand them, you can have a lot of fun with them. So I've enjoyed all different ages. I've worked now at that little schoolhouse with children and with adults for 20, let's see, 69, I guess that's 26 years this year. 26 years this year.
Okay, Ted, you want to tell us a little bit about Elkmont, or what? You were pretty young when you were there, but maybe you can tell us about what your family.
No, not much about Elkmont. I just don't remember much about it other than, you know, back in those days.
Well, Elkmont's noted for its logging, and evidently your father was in the logging business there.
It's true. I do remember Tremont more so because I don't really know, 3, 4, 5, something like that, but I do remember him working over there, and I remember a few things. I do remember the old swinging bridges we had to cross to get over the old railroad track and things like that. And of course, I wasn't supposed to cross that, but I guess I did. But really, I don't remember a whole lot about it.
Did you ride the train to Elkmont?
No.
Just across the tracks, huh?
Yeah, the track go up to the house, followed the river there.
Okay,
What about Uncle Lemoyne? Do you remember
I
him?
remember him.
The last native to live in the park, Uncle Lemoyne. I visited him a number of times. Lou Thompson would say, "Uncle Lem, this is Lou." He'd say, "Come on in."
Okay, what we'll do is we'll open it up if anybody has questions. Maybe these people can answer some questions, specific questions that you might have about the areas in which they lived or about their lifestyle. Yes, sir.
When Mr. Whaley mentioned the lower end of the county, just what part, where's he talking about?
Where did you move to out of the Greenbrier?
Down here, Severe.
Moved to Sevierville.
That lower end.
Any further than that, and you're out of the county.
Yeah,
almost.
out of the county.
Yes, ma'am.
There was an old train that had been left way back up in Greenbrier, way back in the mountains, but still back there today. It just hiked way back.
It's an old steam engine, sawmill boiler, and it's on the head of Indian Creek. It's still in there. It was there to cut my grandfather Manning's timber, and as he came out, well, the man that was driving it, well, it turned over with him and throwed him across the creek and knocked the breath out of him, almost killed him. My Uncle Johnny Manning was following along after the thing, and Arvin Husky. And Arvin had asked Mr. Free, Jim Free was the man that was driving that sawmill boiler out of there, asked him if he wanted him to get up and help him with, and he said, "No, I can handle it." And so he had run upon a loose rock on the upper side of the road, and it kicked out, and being top heavy, well, it just turned over into the creek, Indian Creek, the head of Indian Creek there, and of course it's still in there.
Jerry, we have mics now. If they'll hold their hand up, we'll get a mic to them. I have one question right here.
Mr. Whaley, tell this audience what you do now that keeps you so young. Tell them about all your churches and about moving to Greenbrier Church.
I didn't get her question.
He'd like you to tell about the Greenbrier Church and what you do to stay young.
Oh, the Greenbrier Church. Well, I'm a lover of the old Greenbrier Church. My ancestors was members, and my great-grandfather, my great-uncle, really. Well, my great-grandfather was a ordained minister, and his son, Bradford, and he was a pastor of the old Greenbrier Church there at one time. And when the park or the government bought the land and the people had to move out, well, they gave us the house. If we tear it down and move it out. Well, my grandmother had a good friend, Aunt Debbie Clark, lived over in the Birds Creek area. And she got to talking to Aunt Debbie about the church and about the government promising to give us the house if we could find a place to set it up. And she said that she would give a half an acre of land, and she did. But then the clerk and some of the officers of the church Why, they said that that a gift in law wouldn't hold water, and it would as long as Aunt Debbie lived. But after she passed away, you know, the heirs could go and sell the church property. And so he encouraged the church to give her $50, and we did, to make it legal and to have a deed for it. And it's on Birds Creek now. We tore it down from out of the Greenbrier and hauled it over on the Birds Creek area there, near Smoky Mountain, where Smoky Mountain Academy used to be. It's Camp Smoky, they call it now. And we put the house, built the house back, just like it was up in the Greenbrier area. Board for board, the weatherboarding, the ceiling, the flooring, and the sheeting, everything, even the belfry, is just like it was up in the Greenbrier area when we all lived up there. Well, Elder W.A. Gregory was the pastor in the Greenbrier, when it was in the Greenbrier, the last pastor in the Greenbrier. One of the older ones was Bradford Whaley. He is a great uncle of mine, and he was the son of William M. Whaley, which was my great-grandfather. Anyway, we moved the church down and set it up over there, used the same material, although we had to cut it down 2 feet in the width and in the length in order to have enough lumber to build it back, because we was too poor to buy lumber, and we had to use what we had. The only thing that's different about it now, it has a metal roof on it. It had a board roof when it was up in the Greenbrier area, but the old church is sitting there on the Birds Creek watershed of the Birds Creek area now, and I have the key. And
what do you do there?
I am the unworthy elder of the church at the time being. And I take my friends, visiting friends, I love the old church so much, I sometimes will encourage them to go with me, and I unlock the door and takes them in and shows them the inside of the old building. The old benches is the same as they was up in the Greenbrier area, and they're homemade benches, and they're dressed with an old jack plane. All that lumber, that weatherboarding and ceiling of the house was dressed for one of those old jack planes, they call it, hand plane. It's all hand plane lumber. And if I do have to say it, it looks nice yet today. The old church does. I enjoy taking my friends that I get acquainted with, even the people out of state, tourists that comes here that I get acquainted with, that I hike with along the old trails. I'll mention it to them, and some of them wants to go and look at it, and I'm glad to take them and to show them, or anybody to show them the old church. And as I said, today, I still am the unworthy elder of the church. I never have said I was a preacher, I've been asked the question many times. I've never told anybody that I was a preacher. There's just one preacher, and let me point out that only one preacher, and he preached his own everlasting gospel while he was here, and he is still the preacher today, and that is man Christ Jesus, the Lord. That's the only preacher.
Okay, we're going to take about a 5-minute break and let you stand up just a few minutes and relax a little bit, and then we're going to have 3 people that's going to join us on the panel. Mr. Harvey Oakley is in the audience, and he's going to join to field questions if you have questions. Ms. Lucinda Ogle, who's here, and Mr. Herb Clabo. And so take about a 5-minute break, and then they will come back and answer questions if you have them.
You didn't tell about the guys.
Hey, we're going to start our second segment, and I'd like to find out just from the audience, could I see a hand of those people who are from Sevier County? Good number, good number. Okay, now, all those who were born in the park, let me see your hands out there. Would you please stand up, those of you who were born in the park? Okay, let's see who they are and where they were born.
Well, my name is Glenn Husky, and I was born up in the Sugarlands up above where the park office is now.
All right.
What did you say?
I'm Patricia Reagan Lynn, and I was born in Sugarlands. My father's name was Richard Reagan.
Can we have another one? But he did live on the Sugarland. He misunderstood.
I'm Edgar Williamson, and I was born right below Henwall Falls in Cock County.
I'm Eileen Fowler, and I was born on Porter Creek. Zenith can tell you all about it.
While I'm running back up here, is there anybody from out of Sevier County? Let's see their hands. Well, that's great. How about out of the state of Tennessee? 4, 5. All right, that's fine. Let's give those people a hand also, please.
We have a few people to join us. We have with us Mr. Herb Clabo. Mr. Clabo is from the Baskins Creek area. And Roaring Fork, right. That's pretty close, both of those places. There is a distinction.
I've been called a Whaley, but I ain't going to be misplaced.
Okay, and then we have Harvey Oakley. Harvey is the son of Wiley Oakley. I know some of you have heard that name, Wiley Oakley. And he's just from about all over the park, I believe. I won't place you. You want to tell me exactly which branch you want to claim as your home?
Mill Creek. The one he was talking about was Mill Creek.
Okay, Mill Creek.
On the foot of Mount LeConte.
All right.
Born and raised, born on the foot of Mount LeConte, about the last house back there.
Now, Harvey's the baby brother of another panelist, Lucinda Oakley Ogle, who is also the daughter of Mr. Wiley Oakley.
I was born at the old home place.
And where was that?
That's about middle ways, not too far from where you go into Twin Creeks.
On Mill Creek.
Where there's some big old sugar maple trees. That's the reason I'm so sweet. I eat a lot of sugar.
LeConte Creek now, they call it. Isn't that right? LeConte Creek.
All right, and some of you, if you are familiar with that area, her grandparents on her mother's side, Ann Ogle was her mother. Her grandparents are Noah Bud Ogle, and their house still stands in the park. And it's on the Nature Trail at Roaring Fork.
Well, I need to let them figure out how close akin to Ernest I am. My mother was an Ogle. She belonged to the Jungle Brook people. And my husband was an Ogle, lived in the Sugar Land. So I married sweet. Ernest is the sweetest one. He eat a lot of sugar.
Okay, but all those Ogles came with William from South Carolina.
We're four or five generations away, so we got a little new blood all along.
We'll start down here. If anybody has specific questions, I'm going to let them tell just one little short story, the new panelists, and then you can ask them questions. But they might spur a question. We'll start down with you, Aunt Lucinda. She happens to be my aunt,
somebody want to ask me something?
Well, why don't you tell just a little short story?
Well, no.
You want to answer a
First,
question?
I want to let them know that I'm a mountaineer and not a hillbilly. Oh.
Now remember, we got some tourists here.
Tell them the difference.
Tell us the difference.
Yeah, the difference. Well, hillbillies didn't work and the mountaineers did. And so anybody's hillbilly's lazy.
She made that statement up at the park headquarters at Christmas past one year when I had charge of a panel. And as she got through with her spiel about the difference between a hillbilly and a mountaineer, a very lovely lady came walking up the aisle and she said, "Miss Elsie, may I say something?" I said, "Yes, go right ahead." She said, "I'm a hillbilly and we have worked for what we got."
Yeah, but could I tell something about that?
Sure, go right ahead.
About that about the marrying part. I thought it was real funny. And I was writing an article one day, and I said, it's a good thing the part came, when I was telling that practically all of us were Ogles, I said, it's a good thing the part came when it did, so I could give my children new blood. No, we could get new blood. Boy, I got in trouble right away. Have you know I didn't marry my kinfolks. I said, if you live Sevier County, you may have a div Ogle in you because there was 5 sons and 2 daughters, and the Whaleys and the McCarters are the others, you see. So after they got spread out and went up all these hollers, and they quit being kin to you. Right now, I can just pick out every I want for my kids. Now, that's enough. And Miss Elsie, I want her to tell how she entertains tourists. Since you're all local. You tell her the gourd tail. She doesn't have a gourd, but she can use one of these little glasses. If she can't do it, I can help her.
Well, I'll tell that boys and girls back then had to go after the water to drink for the school. And in many places, they took a bucket and went to the spring and got a bucket of water and brought it back. And there was a dipper lying there on the desk nearby, and everybody drank out of the same dipper. And children would say, ugh. And then I say, the first dippers were made of gourds. And I have a gourd, which is a gourd dipper. And I said, there was a man walking a long ways on a hot summer day, and he decided he'd stop and get him a drink at a spring. And on the way, he saw a woman out working, and he thought he'd be nice, and he'd say, "May I get a drink at your spring?" And she said, "Help yourself."
Oh, wait a minute. She's not told what her mouth looked like.
Well,
let me tell that part of it. She'd been using snuff, and it was running all down on each side. Now, and she's hoeing in a garden right close to her spring.
And so
he went down
to the spring, and he picked up the gourd dipper, and he looked at it. He wondered, is she right-handed and drinks like this? Or is she left-handed and drinks like this? Then he saw the handle of the dipper was cut off, and he got him a big drink of water, and he enjoyed it so much when he heard the woman just laugh, and she said, That's the first time I ever saw anybody drink just like I do.
Now, Harvey.
I do declare.
Harvey, I say that you've had a pretty rough time living with an older sister like that in the household.
Oh, yeah.
You want to tell us? Do you want to tell us about it?
Older time. I guess everybody heard me last year. I was on the panel last year. Everybody here hear me? Oh, you didn't? I picked the guitar and sung on top of Old Smoky and Pass the Biscuits Miranda. Last year I was on the thing. Okay, what do you want me to tell about Lucinda? Let me tell this a little about myself. Now, I was born back in there at the foot of Mount LeConte. I guess nearly one of the last house back there, an old log cabin, and born with a midwife. And my mother's old home place was the Noy Bud Ogle place. And I visited there quite a bit, and then when we finally moved down to Gatlinburg, I remember going barefooted, going to the Pi-Phi. When they come to Gatlinburg, the Pi-Phi school, that was a good thing for the mountain people. Everybody liked the Pi-Phi school when it finally got started in Gatlinburg. And I remember walking down there's 2 country stores when I was just a little tot, and we'd pick up chestnuts to buy our winter shoes. We'd go barefooted all winter. I mean, all summer, and then till winter time comes when we'd go down to Ogle store, and he'd sell us a pair of old Progam shoes, which, you know, you'd hunt them out of a box. You know, if you find them made, he'd sell them to us cheap. But if you couldn't find them made, the one at 50 most of the time. Then the Pi-Phi school, that was real nice. Ogle, I remember there at Ogle store, you'd come down there, and everything forded the creek there. And all the way, the same thing that through Gatlinburg, everything coming from Pigeon Forge or Knoxville, wherever it could, everything forded the creek, the wagons and the buggies. They went right on up along with the river, and all them cornfields, and the same way over here in Pigeon Forge, all with them cornfields, them motels out there, that was where they made their living. And everything come right up the river, mostly all the way from Knoxville it came along the river. See, I'm 78 now. And I remember a lot of them things. Gatlinburg, everything forded the creek right there. I remember the buggies and everything go through, and then when they got cars right there at, now that's where the old Ogle building, where we're descendants from, the Ogle. See, my mother was an Ogle, and they lived in, up at the Noy Bud Ogle place. Lucinda called it Jungle Book a while ago, but it's not that. It's Noy Bud Ogle place. And
Grandpa's place.
and then we moved down to Gatlinburg, and you want me to tell any more much?
Well, a little bit more.
Cut it right short. You don't want to tell about the haint tail, do you?
No, that takes too
I
long.
can tell it real fast.
You'll do it real quick.
Okay, first, when we moved out of the park, we moved in this haunted house. That was at Roaring Fork and Zoder's Court. And there's an old mill across the creek, and us kids had an old coffin factory over, and they disbanded years ago, and us kids would get in there and look through them little old glasses up there, you know, nothing to preach his funeral like that, you know, preach like it did back in the mountains. And then when we got through playing them coffins, why, we put them down on the river, and the river got up and was swimming, making boats out of them. The river got up and they went through Pigeon Forge. And they said the graveyard washed away up Gatlinburg. Back to the other side over there where we moved in this haunted house. Right, I'll tell it real fast. And nobody moved in there. This man got killed. His blood all out on the porch, and that was the first house. My dad said he was known as Wiley Oakley, the wrong man of the mountains, and he had 12 kids. And nobody else let us move in their place. We moved down Harvey Park, back up in there to Gatlinburg, and he said that Dad told him, said, Haint said, nobody else will live there. He said, my kids will run that Haint off. So that night, we moved in there, moved in that old house there where Zoder's Court is right now. And that old coffin factory over there, you know, made it worse, you know, and they'd been disbanded for years. And that night, while me and my younger brother, we had to sleep upstairs. You went up a little old stairs, and And
Up in the loft.
Yeah, up in the loft. Kind of loft. It had stairs though. And that night, I was the youngest one. My brother was next to me. All the rest stayed downstairs, but me and him. And then we had to go. We had to go up there and sleep. And the first night, we didn't dare go to sleep. After a while, we heard this go swish, swish, bump, bump. We looked over there, and something white was going along the wall like that. And boys, we went out that, jumped out of that bed and down the stairs. We went and slept on the pallet the rest of the night. And the next night, it's our job to go right back up there, sleep. He gave us a big old box. We didn't have no flashlights and stuff like that back in them days. He gave us a big old box of matches about that wide, them big old sticks on them, you know. And he said, now, get in there and get in that bed. And my brother, he was a little older than me. I was real small. And he was ready to strike that match when the Hank come through, you know. And, well, after a while, we didn't dare go to sleep, but way in the night, well, it started. Swish, swish, bump, bump. Looked over there along the wall. The wall was just sealed up a little ways. Something was going up, a white thing was going up over that wall and going and dropping stuff back or what it was. The Hank, he struck the match. There's two big albino white rats that come from that old mill over there. They were living on that house. They was pulling old clothes around, making them a den. That was the Hank story.
Okay, Mr. Clabo, would you like to tell us a little bit about Roaring Fork and what you did there as a young boy? Or anything?
Well, I was a little older than Harvey, I guess, so we done about the same thing. We did walk. I walked a mile and a half to school, and I've often said the more you put in the thing, probably the more you get out of it. So the mile and a half of going to school in a one-room schoolhouse, I said if you missed it the first year, you could get it the next year. You're all the subjects taught. For the 8th year you went, you hear that certain subjects taught. Each year you started usually in the primer, which is, but we went to school usually as snow or pretty, and didn't begrudge it, no, due to the fact that some of us went to school to learn, others went to school to get out of work. Some of them, well, Homer Bales, most of them knows that I didn't. Well, but he told me, said I went to school to get out of work. But anyway, some of them didn't really go to school to learn, others did, and part of the time we'd go to Baskins, which is a half a mile further, which was 2 miles to Baskin School. And usually we'd go on account of the teacher. I've often said that some teachers can teach you when others couldn't teach you a thing. You could go all summer and never learn a thing from them. So we'd usually pick the teacher, and that is where I told them I learned my ZYXWBUTSRQPONMLKJIGFEDCBA. So we tried to go to the the teachers that could teach us. Time's running out, and I'll not get in no long story.
Okay. These people have a lot of things to tell you, but I hope that you have questions that you will ask them that they can answer for you. Any questions out there?
It's a short answer question, but not long answer.
Yeah, short answer question.
Where did he get the name Zenith?
That's a $65 question. I don't know. There's not another one that I know of in the United States with the first name Zenith. I tell them sometimes that I invented the Zenith radio on TV, but they don't believe it. They don't believe it. But I am older than the TV.
I'd like to have Lucinda tell about when her daughter was born and where and how she
acted when she heard somebody coming?
That one I don't remember.
No, I think it was your daughter.
Told.
Yes, your daughter that was born when you'd hear somebody coming, you'd hide her under the bed.
No, I don't remember that. If it was, I'd have to yodel, I guess.
You need to tell her that yodel. Lucinda and Harvey's father was a mountain guide, and he also had a lot of tourists he took in the mountains, and he would tell these stories.
If they weren't true, he yodeled. But if they were true stories, he didn't yodel. So I'll have to
I
yodel.
guess Aunt Lucinda forgot to yodel when she told you that first story.
I might have made up the story. I don't remember.
Other questions?
I'm interested in the situation that prevailed before the Chestnut Blight, and I've seen log cabins, I think, that make the whole wall out of one or two slabs. Two logs make a whole side of the house. There's one up there close to where Zenith lived. I thought there was a cabin and you had a whole wall by just two logs.
It was three logs, wasn't it?
Does anybody know about the chestnut
It was
tree?
the hiker's cabin. It was three logs high.
I know that cabin.
That cabin.
The hiker's cabin.
But you always have to have a tie log and a bottom log. The tie log's what keeps them all together, and the bottom log keeps all of that together. And so that's why the doors are short. Sometimes they couldn't lift the logs anymore, and they'd have one or two in between. But there's always one in between where you cut for your door.
Okay, he's talking about the chestnuts. Were you familiar
They were
of
that
them
big,
building
yes,
those chestnuts
yes,
and the sizes of those chestnuts?
But they had to be three logs, though, because you cut the middle. The middle one would be the big. He'd be about 6 or 7 feet, but you'd have to put in one on the bottom and top to make corners hooked together. No, get your. This is the log. This was the thing. You have to have a tie log before you can cut your door out. And you have to have a sill log before you can put your flooring on. And that's why a lot of times if they couldn't lift the logs, they'd have little short doors. The one I live in, my castle is a log house, and most people have to stoop to get out the front door. But I've got other windows in places where I see out.
Ted, when you were on the rolling store, most people didn't get to town, I know, but could you tell us basically what people bought, the most common things that you sold? I know you cared about everything, but what did you most commonly sell?
Well, it was the big thing, was flour, meal, sugar, salt, soda, coffee, stuff of that nature. Sugar, we
baking powder.
No, just food. The most outstanding thing ever happened to me on the rolling store was one time we was going around the edge of English Mountain, and up in there was big sugar country. I remember we always had to put 600 or 800 pounds of sugar on that truck when we made that route. And one time I was up there going down this little narrow road, and the truck just scraping both sides, and two men jumped out in the road, and I thought, oh my Lord, I'm being robbed. Each one bought a 50-pound bag of sugar and back up the hill and went.
Some of these may be Yankees in here, and they may not know what the sugar is used for. You want to elaborate?
I have no idea.
Oh, have no idea. We have a question back here.
Either Herb or anyone up there, Herb may know, I believe he told me this once. Tell them how Boogertown Road got that unusual name.
Got Boogertown?
What did he say?
Tell us how Boogertown got its name.
Boogertown.
Hold that mic up close.
Most of these places has got 2 or 3 different stories. So if I tell one, somebody say, that ain't it. The other saying, somebody's telling me how Fighting Creek got its name, but I hadn't heard it that way. But that's the reason I said most of the places do have different names for it. But really, I don't know. Right now, my mind went blank on how Boogertown got its name. It's through a lot of people. We use the word booger. I don't know it's in the dictionary or not, and it don't matter. But anyway, that was sort of a deformed or an unusual thing a booger was.
That's sort of a scary thing.
Yeah, of course, and that's just going to be scary. Really, I don't know, Frank, what right now, but as I may have told you.
Some of them had the booger in the nose.
Well, I thought it was something about the boys going home from their dates having to pass through a cemetery in that area or something along that line.
I believe Vita's got the answer for you.
I'm a Boogertownian.
Yeah.
No, Herb's right. There are 2 or 3 different stories, but it really comes back to like Hank stories. One person saw Hank when they rode through Boogertown, and so everybody teased him after that and said that, you know, they weren't going to move over to Boogertown because there were a lot of boogers over there, but they were just talking about being afraid of Hanks. And I think it turned out to be he was afraid of a cow or something real simple. And then there was another, I think one other story said the people that first moved to Boogertown, it was a man and a woman, and the woman was supposed to be both of them were supposed to be a homely couple, and they said, well, they're going to move over there because it's real shady and it's mostly all hollers, and they said, well, they're going to move over there and raise a bunch of little boogers. So that, but I think it probably comes from Hank tales.
Other questions?
Jerry, I don't know whether or not Herb brought it along tonight, but did you bring your little harmonica with you tonight?
Your juice harp?
Happened so.
Oh, well, just pull that thing right out.
Snoot organ.
Oh, it's a snoot organ. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Not the juice off the snoot organ. Happened so it got in my pocket somehow or another. I've got the G and the C. I told them at my age, you can't play a G or a snoot organ much because it takes more wind to blow a G than it does a C. But I will try it. Let me tell you something right here. Don't clap. I can play you another one while you're clapping. Got you stalled, ain't it, old Granny?
Yeah,
that's old Granny Hare. What are you doing now, sitting in the pea patch watching for a bar? Yeah. Just sort of stalled you.
Tell us first what you gonna play.
Huh?
Tell us first what you gonna play. We'll see if it sounds like it.
Hillbilly's on the This is Casey Jones. Most of you have heard of him, never did see him, but you heard. You might pat your foot.
Now, I don't know if Zenith has in his pocket, but he sometimes carries a songbook and he breaks out in song. I don't know if he's got a songbook in there or not. Do you got a songbook in your pocket?
No, I usually carry it, so, especially when I'm hiking.
Sing that old harp song.
Well, I believe you sung those songs so many times, you surely can remember one without having the songbook.
If he wouldn't make them too lonesome, I might sing a verse or two of a cemetery song or a graveyard song.
I believe these people can take it.
I came to the place where the lone pilgrim lay, and tenderly stood by the tomb, when in a low whisper I heard something say, how sweetly I sleep here alone. The tempest may howl and the loud thunder roar, and gathering storms may arise, yet calm is my feeling, at rest is my soul. The tears are all wiped from my eyes. The calls of my master compel me from home. I bid my companion farewell. I bless my dear children who now for me mourn. In far distant regions they dwell. Oh, tell my companion and children most dear to weep not for me, now I'm gone. The same hand that led me through scenes most severe has kindly assisted me home.
Well, I know Harvey doesn't have his banjo, and I don't know. He can cover a whole lot of singing up with the banjo, but can you sing without a banjo?
I'll sing you one verse.
Okay, we'll take
one
that.
or two verses. You want me to sing? Well, you want me
Well, let's sing one verse, and then we'll say if we want to hear it.
I'll sing. On top of Old Smoky, all covered with snow, I lost my true lover by courting too slow. Oh, courting is pleasure, but parting is grief. A false-hearted lover is worse than a thief. You want to hear any more? They will rob you and take what you have, but a false-hearted lover will take you to your grave. The grave, it will hold you till your body's turned to dust. Not a boy in 10,000 will do for a girl to trust. They'll hug you and kiss you. They'll tell you more lies than the cross ties on the railroad, than the stars in the skies. It's raining, it's hailing, and the moon gives no light. Your horses can't travel this dark stormy night. Go put up your horses and feed them some hay. Come and sit down beside me, what time you have to stay. My horses aren't hungry and they won't eat your hay.